Hi, I'm Dave. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to take a look at some very cheap slot cars. So, the slot cars in question are the Policar Home Racers Subaru WRX STIs. They've recently released these. They are stupidly cheap. They're £22.50 each. So they're basically half the price of a Scale Electric or a Carrera, certainly in the UK. Because they're made on a budget, it's made out of cardboard, this box, nice and cheap, and so is the inner box. You know, I like cardboard because you can recycle it again. And don't need all that plastic. We've been through this before. So, I'm going to say it again. This car is £22.50. It's got to be one of the cheapest slot cars around, and it's a Policar, so you know it's going to be pretty good. It's got quite a lot of detail on it, you know, nice little moulded grills and badges on the front. There's a certain amount of detail in the side of it. It's quite a crisp mould. I mean, it's not perfect. They've not spent a lot of money on it, but it's good, really good for the price. Again, little badges on the back, twin tailpipes, and the finish on the paint is pretty good, really. There's a few kind of questionable lines in the moulding, but it's not too bad. It's certainly, if you really wanted to, it's probably quite a good base to kind of strip off and repaint, because it's only £22.50. You could get one and have a go. It does come with a magnet and 4 screws to hold the body in, and there's no room for float at the moment in these cars. They're home racer cars, they're not hobbyist cars. So, no float, none of this 2-post rattly screws thing. Nope, just top and the bottom, screw them together. So inside, the first interesting thing is, for such a cheap budget, it's got headlights. And there's a little kind of circuit board that I think just steps down the voltage to stop the LEDs blowing with the voltage off the track. And of course one of the little slotted plugs. So as bodies go, this thing is super tough and durable. The detail on it is pretty good, really. You've got a driver and a co-driver in there, and although it's made on a budget and they're both posed the same, the driver is holding a steering wheel and the co-driver is holding a pad with pace notes on it. So it kind of got away with that. There's a bit of detail on the roof gutters as well, which is, you know, for such a cheap car, and the paint finish is just lovely. I guess you could probably get a brush and paint the door handles up, and I'm a bit confused by the fact that it's got a driver and a co-driver and a pair of rear headrests for the rear seats. That wouldn't be the case. But again, nice durable thing, good solid lump of plastic, no rattles or squeaks. These door mirrors are incredibly tough. I can't see them falling off in a hurry. You'd have to crash it really hard. And the boot spoiler is, again, it's not coming off. I don't think it's all part of the same mould. I think it is, yeah, it is held in with melts, but they are super tough. And the chassis, well, it's a flat chassis. There's nothing particularly clever about it. It does come with Policar gears, axles, and wheels. So you know everything is going to be round, that should be, and everything's going to be straight, that should be. And they're quality components. There are brass bushings inset into the plastic chassis for the rears, and the fronts have those kind of Scale Electric pioneery style plastic bushings that are just kind of clip in. It's a standard short can motor. I think it's 13.5 k. Nothing to set the world on fire, but it is, as I've said before, a very, very cheap slot car. It is also pre-drilled for all the sensors for the Scale Electric and Carrera digital systems. So if you want to put, I think, slot it to a universal chip that will fit in this, and you can switch between analog and your preferred digital system with one chip. There's a little bit of side play in these front bearings, and they do rattle up and down a little bit, but I think we can probably squeeze the wheels onto the axle just to remove a little bit of that side play, and we might deal with the slop in the bearings later. Standard Policar kind of, well, and Carrera as well, set up for braids. Some people don't like those double braids, but they work well on a Carrera track, so that's no surprise. Right, let's just put this back together. So there we are. That is really box stock. I haven't done anything to it. Let's just see how ready to run it is. And the answer is incredibly. I'm nearly, with the magnet in it, flat out, full trigger, straight out the box, all the way around this track. It's nuts. I can't believe they made such a good car this cheap. I know I'm repeating myself, but it's staggering. So this is great. You could get one of these, leave the magnet in it, give it to a little kid, oops, and they could smash it about like that, and it wouldn't really matter. It's not really going to break, and even if it did, it was really cheap. So this rocket ship did a lap in 5.4 seconds round my track, which makes it fourth fastest, but it's got a magnet in. So what I am going to do now is pop the magnet out, because, as I've said in previous videos, me just holding a trigger right down for an entire lap is not something I find entertaining. I'd rather the car handled less well and was a more interesting and challenging drive. So I'm just going to take the magnet out. Now there's a couple of little springs in that setup, so be careful of those. Pop the bolts out of the way, and a quick flex of that plastic, and it's not even a very big magnet, to be honest with you. You do get a small amount of magnetic downforce from that inline motor that's in there, but most of it comes from that magnet. So that's it. Magnet out, back to the track. Is this car, with no other tuning and just removing the magnet, still a ready to run car? And the answer to that is yes, it is. Look at it. Box stock, nothing done to it apart from remove the magnet, and it runs really, really well. I'm going to say it again, it's a £22.50 car. It's crazy. You know, it's the slotted bits, it's the wheels and tyres. They're very round and they're very good. And as we know, wheels and tyres are everything on a slot car, and that's where they've spent most of their £22.50 and made the rest of it as cheap as possible. And that really has, I think, paid off. This is a phenomenal car. It's ready to run out the box with a magnet in, take it out. I would say this is still a ready to run car. There we are, even with the magnet out, 6.67 seconds, which puts it in the same sort of league as the Carrera cars and so on. And again, you know, especially a Carrera car, it's more like a third of the price. Just for reference, it's an 84 gram car with a 2 gram magnet in it. So I have done a little bit of tuning to this. There's not a lot you can do really, but I did just run a little bit of solvent glue just to prevent any rattles that could occur with use of the car. I've super glued in those plastic bushings into the chassis, and that's got rid of a lot of rattle. And I've just moved the wheels in slightly to prevent some side slop, but they still spin nice and freely. And I've put about 3 grams of lead either side of the motor, just in the middle there, and stuck everything else down with some bits of blue tack so they don't rattle about. You know me, I don't like a rattle. So there's a spare bit of blue tack there, and then when I've plugged those 2 wires together, I'll stick it on there. The rear's not too bad at all. Obviously, unlike most home set cars, this motor is held down by a strap and some screws. It's not snapping, so it's not going to move about. So there we are. No rattles, no noises. I think that's as good a tuning as we're going to get. One other thing I am going to do, I noticed the bottom of the guide is a little bit rough and it was clicking a little bit on my track joints, so I'm just going to sand the front off it a little bit as well and make sure the bottom edge of it is actually smooth. And that should do. It's a reasonable car for the price anyway. What are we trying to do with it? So those little bits of tweaks took me from 6.677 seconds to 6.5. I'm very happy with that. I'll say it again. This car is £22.50. It's half the price of most home set cars. It's a third the price of a Revo slot. It's, well, I mean, you probably get 5 for the price of a BRM. And it's an awful lot of fun. No, it's not going to set the world on fire, and it's not super fast, it's not super detailed, but I think it's a great little thing. Like I say, you can give it some kids and they can smash it up and it doesn't really matter. If you wanted to experiment with painting the body of a car for the first time, £22.50, it doesn't really matter if you wreck it, does it? You're still going to have a car that will run and you haven't really wasted anything. Worst case, you could always just rattle can it matte black and put it back together. So I think it's great. I think it's great for the money. I think it'd probably be great at twice the money. They do, I think, 5 or 6 colours of it now, so you could have an IROC series with that, couldn't you? So here's my two, the silver one, and the silver paint is pretty good as well, and the blue one. And there is our favourite critic, Mr. Thumbs Up Man, giving his verdict. And guess what? As always, he approves. As always, thanks for watching one of my videos. If you liked it, you will find a button specifically for that. Please subscribe to the channel. It's free and it does help. And if you hit a bell, you will get a notification the next time I post a video. And of course, check out this Slot Car channel.